I'm Captain Marin Voss, 45 years old, and I command the USS Ronald Reagan, one of the United States Navy's frontline aircraft carriers. For 27 years, I gave my family the benefit of the doubt while they treated my career like a phase I would grow out of. But when a lieutenant on my own ship yelled across the wardroom for me to vacate the brass booth before the captain came in, not knowing I was the captain, something I had been carrying for 30 years finally had to be said out loud. Have you ever been underestimated by someone who should have known better? If so, tell me your story in the comments. You are not alone. Before I get into what happened, let me know where you are tuning in from. And if you have ever had to stand up for yourself after being wronged, hit that like button and subscribe. It was the summer of 1999, and I was packing a duffel bag in the upstairs bedroom of my parents' house in Mount Lebanon, Pennsylvania, for a bus that left in 14 hours. I was 18 years old. The bus was going to Recruit Training Command Great Lakes, north of Chicago. My mother had been cleaning the same patch of kitchen counter for half an hour. My father was sitting at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee that had gone cold. My older brother Garrett, who was 20 and home from his first year at Penn State, was at a fraternity event in State College, and he had not come home that weekend to see me off. My brother Garrett was born first, by 2 years, and by every other measurement that mattered in my parents' house. He was the responsible one, the reliable one, the one whose grades they framed and hung on the wall above the telephone in the hallway. By the time I was 12, I had figured out that the surest way to disappoint our father was to do something interesting. Garrett did not do anything interesting. He did the things you were supposed to do, in the order you were supposed to do them, and our parents loved him for it, the way other parents love their children for becoming doctors. I was the one who climbed the tree in the front yard and sat in the top branch reading a library book about the Apollo program and not coming down when my mother called for dinner. I told my parents in the spring of that year, at a Sunday dinner of roast chicken and green beans, that I was going to enlist in the Navy after graduation. My father set down his fork. My mother set down her fork. My brother, home for spring break, looked up from his plate. "Marin," Garrett said. "Come on. Be serious for once." My father laughed. He thought it was a joke. He waited for me to laugh. I did not laugh. He stopped laughing. 6 months, he said, finally, smiling the kind of smile a man smiles when he believes he is being kind. "That is my prediction. You will be back here asking for tuition money by Christmas." My mother began to cry quietly into her napkin. She had been hoping for a phase. She had been hoping I would do summer camp things and then get serious about a normal life. She had not been hoping for a duffel bag and a bus. In the kitchen the night before I left, my mother packed me a turkey sandwich in a paper bag with 2 oranges and a roll of paper towels she could not bear not to include. I watched her hands fold the wax paper over the bread. Her hands shook a little. She did not let me see her face. In the morning, my father drove me to the bus station. He put the duffel bag in the back of the station wagon and he closed the lid, and he did not say anything until we were on the road. At the bus station, my mother hugged me once, quickly, and stepped back. My father patted me on the shoulder. He smiled the same kind smile he had smiled at the dinner table. 6 months, he said. He thought he was being kind. I was 18, and my mother packed me a turkey sandwich for the bus ride to Great Lakes, like I was going to summer camp. I ate the sandwich on the bus, looking out at the cornfields, and I told myself I would not call home crying. 3 months later, I graduated boot camp in the front rank of my division with a leadership ribbon and a meritorious advancement to E3. My parents were not in the audience. They had Garrett's law school orientation at Penn that weekend, and they had told me, when I asked, that they could not make both trips. I took a photograph with my division commander. I sent the photograph home in an envelope. My mother put it on the refrigerator under a magnet shaped like a strawberry. The magnet was already holding 3 photographs of Garrett. By 2001, I had been promoted twice. I had been awarded a letter of commendation for a watch I had stood at a refit yard in Norfolk where a fueling pump had failed, and I had isolated the failure before the engine room watch even realized there was a problem. The letter of commendation was the first piece of paper I had received in my adult life that no one in my family knew the value of. I did not send it home. I put it in a folder in the bottom of my locker. I added to the folder. That same year, the Navy selected me for the Seaman to Admiral Commissioning Program. Penn State. Navy ROTC Scholarship. a path to officer that was, on paper, indistinguishable from my brother's path, except that mine had begun on a bus station bench with a turkey sandwich, and his had begun at our father's office, where he had been told, from the day he was 12, that he was a Penn State man. I called my father from a payphone at the barracks. My mother was not home. My father answered, "Dad, they picked me for the commissioning program. I am going to Penn State on a Navy scholarship to be an officer." There was a long pause. "Penn State," he said finally. "Like your brother." "Yes, Dad, like Garrett." "Well," he said, "that is good. Maybe you can ask him for advice." I told him I would. I hung up. I did not call Garrett. I walked back to the barracks. I put the call out of my head. In the fall of that year, I bought a Navy ROTC uniform from the supply office at Penn State, and I walked across the quadrangle in the new uniform for the first time. I caught my reflection in the window of a coffee shop across from the student union. I stopped. I looked at the woman in the window. She did not look like the 17-year-old at the kitchen table. She did not look like the kind of woman my parents could mistake for a phase. I told myself in the window of the coffee shop that I belonged here. My parents at home in Mount Lebanon were still telling each other I would drop out. In 2003, I was commissioned as an ensign in the United States Navy, and I reported to Naval Air Station Pensacola for primary flight training. The summer was thick and Florida wet. The runways glittered. I learned to land a T-6 on a centerline. I learned what it was like to be one of 3 women in a class of 40. I learned that the men I was training with were almost all decent, and that the ones who were not were predictable in a way I had already learned to handle. I flew well. By 2005, I was sitting in the cockpit of an FA-18 Hornet for the first time, holding the stick and listening to the engine's spool, and I thought about my father at the bus station saying 6 months. He had been wrong. I had been in for 6 years. I was just getting started. My winging ceremony was a sunny Friday at Pensacola. My parents drove down. Garrett was studying for the Pennsylvania bar exam and could not come. My mother took a picture on her flip phone. The picture was blurry. At the reception, my mother asked me, twice, when I was going to settle down with someone. My father asked me whether the planes were hard to land. "Some of them, Dad." "Why do they make them hard to land?" I told him. He nodded politely and looked over my shoulder for the cheese plate. The next year, Garrett married Britt, a boutique owner from Shadyside who had been his college girlfriend for 2 years. I was the best girl, reluctantly. Britt would have preferred Garrett's law school roommate, a woman who had 3 sorority sisters in the wedding party. At the rehearsal dinner, Britt had 2 glasses of wine and pulled me aside in the hallway outside the bathroom. She put her hand on my arm. "Marin," she said. She leaned close. "I have to ask. It must be so hard for you. Being in such a man's world. Are the men, respectful?" I told her the men were professional. I did not tell her that I was already outranking several of the men in the bridal party. I did not tell her that 2 months earlier I had passed my carrier qualification on a moving ship in the Atlantic with 12 traps in 2 days, and that I was about to ship to my first operational squadron. I told her the men were professional, and I went back to the rehearsal dinner table, and I sat next to Garrett and listened to Garrett's law school friends talk about clerkships. Britt had asked the question like she was asking a zookeeper if the animals were friendly. I told her the men were professional. I did not tell her that I was already outranking some of them. In 2008, I flew my first combat sortie. It was over Iraq. The mission was close air support for a Marine convoy that had taken indirect fire. I did my job. The Marines went home. I went back to the boat. I did not call my parents about it. I did not know what I would have said. I came home for Christmas that year. I had been awake for 36 hours on the last leg of the flight from the boat to Pittsburgh. At dinner, my father asked Garrett about a partner track meeting at the firm, and Garrett described the meeting for 40 minutes in great detail. My father nodded at every sentence and asked follow-up questions. My mother brought out the pie. Nobody asked me about the deployment. I ate the pie. I went to bed in my old bedroom under a quilt I had slept under as a child. 2 years later, in 2010, the Navy awarded me the Distinguished Flying Cross for an engagement over Helmand Province, in which I had supported a Marine reconnaissance team that had been pinned down in a draw by a much larger force. The team came home, the medal arrived in a box, and my squadron commander pinned it on me at a small ceremony in the hangar. I called my mother that week. I caught her in the kitchen. Mom, I am getting an award next week, the Distinguished Flying Cross. Oh, that is nice, dear. Did I tell you Garrett made associate? She had told me, twice. I did not bring it up again. In 2013, the Navy selected me to be a Top Gun instructor at the Naval Aviation Warfighting Development Center at Fallon. It was the most competitive flight program in the Navy. They picked 4 instructors a year. I called my father from my car after the selection board. Dad, they picked me for Top Gun, the school, as an instructor. Like the movie? It is a real school, Dad. It is the most competitive flight program in the Navy. Oh, huh. Well, that is nice, sweetheart. Listen, I have a sales call. We will talk Sunday. I sat in my car after the call ended. I put the keys in the ignition. I drove back to base. I learned, somewhere between the bus station and the Top Gun selection board, that if you wanted your family to acknowledge what you had done, you had to translate it into a vocabulary they recognized. And by the time I had built that vocabulary for them, I had stopped needing it. The letter of commendation I had not sent home in 2001 had been the first piece of paper in a folder that by 2013 was a thick stack of pieces of paper. None of them were on the refrigerator under a strawberry magnet. None of them needed to be. The next morning at Fallon, I walked across the ramp at sunrise in flight gear. The high desert behind me was pink and gold. A row of FA-18s sat on the line, intake covers off, ground crews moving. I had a coffee in my hand. I was about to walk into the building where I would teach the Navy's best young aviators to fight. Nobody in Mount Lebanon knew what that meant. It did not matter to me anymore. I took command of the USS Ronald Reagan on the pier at Naval Air Station, North Island, on a windy Friday in February of 2026. The change of command was a small ceremony, brisk, professional. The outgoing CO read his orders, I read mine, the Reagan's commission pennant lowered and was replaced by mine. My parents did not fly out. They had Garrett's son's regatta in Annapolis. They had told me by email 2 weeks before that they were sorry they would miss it. My mother had written, "We will visit you when the ship is closer." She did not specify what closer meant. The Reagan was at that point 20 miles up the coast from where they had grown up, summering on Cape May. She had never been on a ship. 17 days later, the Reagan was underway in the Eastern Pacific for the first phase of pre-deployment workups. The Carrier Strike Group commander wanted us at the ready. Workups for a carrier are a 4-month evolution. Flight ops, day and night. Engineering casualties, damage control drills, underway replenishment, boat handling, air picture. The crew falls into rhythm. The ship learns its commander, and the commander learns her ship. I was awake from 0400 hours most days. I walked the bridge before sunrise. I made coffee for the watch officer because the watch officer had been on watch for 6 hours and needed a cup. I learned everyone's name. I learned the chiefs by face within the first 10 days. I had been an aviator for 21 years and a commanding officer of one kind or another for 5, and I knew that the first 30 days of a tour are when a ship decides what to do with you. On a Wednesday in late March, I had been awake since 0330 hours. I had taken the morning ops brief at 0700 hours. I had walked the engineering plant with the chief engineer at 0900 hours. I had had a satellite call with the strike group commander at 10:30 hours. By 11:30 hours, I wanted 15 minutes to eat a sandwich before a meeting at 1300. I walked down the passageway from the captain's in port cabin to the wardroom. I was in service khakis. I had my command at sea, pin on my chest, and the silver eagles of my rank on my collars. I did not have a staff with me. I prefer to walk a ship alone, when I can. You learn things about a ship by walking it alone. The wardroom was full. 11:40 hours is the lunch rush on a Navy ship. Cooks behind the steam line, officers at the long tables talking, coffee mugs and ice waters and bowls of soup, the smell of canned green beans, the flicker of the overhead lights as a generator load shifted. I went to the steam line. I picked up a sandwich and an apple. I poured myself a coffee. I walked to the corner booth at the head of the room, the one with the curve in the bulkhead behind it. The one that has been, by tradition, the seat of the commanding officer of this ship for 30 years. I sat. I unwrapped the sandwich. I took a bite. The door of the wardroom opened, and 4 young pilots came in from the ready room, 4 decks above. The one in the lead was 28 years old. He was a lieutenant. His name was Brody Caldwell. He had reported aboard 48 hours earlier, joining Strike Fighter Squadron 115 for the deployment. He had not yet attended my welcome aboard brief. He was on his third operational tour. He had a distinguished flying cross of his own. He was talented. He was loud. He was holding court about a sortie he had flown that morning, telling the story with his hands, the way pilots tell stories. He stopped in the salad bar line. He gestured with one hand and held a plate in the other. His 3 squadron mates stood behind him. He glanced across the wardroom and he saw a woman in khakis sitting at the head of room booth. He did not look at her collar. He did not look at her chest. He did not stop to think. He raised his voice. He called across the wardroom. "Hey, reserved for brass, lady. Move it before the captain comes in." His squadron mates laughed nervously. One of them, a lieutenant named Diaz, said quietly, "Brody, dude." Brody, louder, performing for the room. "I am serious. You are in the CO's seat. Up." The wardroom froze. The cook behind the steam line stopped ladling. 2 junior officers at the next table went still with food on their forks. A first-class yeoman who had been pouring coffee froze mid-pour. The hum of the ship went on. The air handlers blew. The generators turned. But inside the wardroom, no human being moved. The room understood what was about to happen before Brody did. I looked up from my sandwich. I did not speak. I just looked at Brody, level, the same way I would look at a contact on the radar I was deciding what to do about. Captain Reed Mackenzie, the commander of the embarked carrier air wing, the CAG, was 2 people behind Brody in the salad line. He had been listening. He set down his tray on the rail above the salad bar very deliberately. The metal rang against the stainless steel. The wardroom heard the sound. "Lieutenant," Reed said. A word. Brody, still performing, half turning. "Sir, this lady is in the CO's." "She is your CO," Reed said. His voice was not loud. It carried because the room was now silent enough to carry a single voice. "Captain Voss, the commanding officer of this ship." The color left Brody's face. It was the kind of moment you can watch happen. The blood going out of the skin, the eyes adjusting, the recognition arriving late and all at once. He looked at me. He saw the eagles. He saw the command pin. He saw, finally, the woman. Reed turned to face me. He rendered a salute. Not a parade ground snap. A slow, deliberate, full salute, palm down. He said, voice carrying just enough to be heard by the room. "Captain, my apologies. The lieutenant reported aboard 2 days ago and missed your welcome aboard brief." I returned the salute. I nodded once. I looked back at Brody. "Lieutenant," I said, "sit down and eat your lunch. Welcome aboard. We will see you at brief tomorrow at 0800 hours. Brody's voice had gone small. "Yes, ma'am. Captain. I am sorry, Captain." I went back to my sandwich. Reed got his salad. He came over and sat across from me in the corner booth. He did not make a show of it. He put his napkin on his lap. He picked up his fork. "He is a good aviator," he said quietly. "He just has not learned to look around yet. He will." The wardroom slowly resumed its hum. By the time I finished my sandwich, the room had restarted, but the air had changed. He did not mean me harm. He just had not thought to look. That is the thing about being underestimated for a lifetime. You stop expecting people to see you. And then someone does. At 15:30 hours that afternoon, Reed had Lieutenant Caldwell in his office for a quarter hour. Reed did not raise his voice. Reed does not raise his voice. He told Brody what needed to be said and let it land. He told Brody that the captain had accepted his apology and that the wardroom's generosity was not to be tested twice. He told Brody that if Brody walked through any room on this ship again without looking at the people in it, Brody would not be a talented stick anymore. Brody would be a problem. Brody, standing at attention in the doorway, said, "Yes, sir." Reed dismissed him. The story moved through the ship the way stories do. By 1800 hours, the chief's mess knew. By 2000 hours, the deck division knew. By 0600 the next morning, every sailor on the Reagan had heard some version of it. Most of the versions were accurate. The chiefs tell stories with a precision that other communities do not. They told it the way they had heard it. The captain had not raised her voice. The captain had not made a federal case. The captain had not put the lieutenant on report. The captain had eaten her sandwich. The CAG had stood up. The wardroom had taken care of the rest. I sat at my desk in my in-port cabin at 2100 hours that night. I had a coffee. The cabin was small, neat, lived in. There was a framed photograph of my winging ceremony on the bulkhead. A model of a strike fighter squadron. 94 FA-18 on the shelf. A small American flag folded in a triangular case from my change of command. I had been the commanding officer of the Reagan for 21 days. I had been on watch for nearly 2 months. I was tired in the kind of way that a ship makes you tired, which is good tired, productive tired, the tired of a job that is honest with you about what it demands. There was a knock at the door. Commander Lila Park, the executive officer, came in for the end-of-day brief. We ran through the operational tempo for the next 72 hours. An issue with a fueling pump in number 2 main space had been resolved. The schedule for the next at-sea period was firm. The strike group commander had a question about the Air Wing's basic phase qualification timing. Routine. Lila paused at the door before leaving. "Ma'am," she said, "the wardroom thing. I just want to say, that is why people will follow you anywhere. I just wanted to eat a sandwich." We both laughed. She closed the door. I was alone again. I looked out the porthole at the dark water. I thought about my father patting me on the shoulder at the bus station in 1999. I thought about Britt asking, in the hallway outside the bathroom at the rehearsal dinner, whether the men were respectful. I thought about my mother's, "That is nice, dear," when I had mentioned the Distinguished Flying Cross. I thought about Garrett never asking, once in 20 years, what an actual day in my job looked like. The lieutenant in the wardroom had simply spoken out loud what my family had been saying to me, quietly, in every kitchen and at every Thanksgiving, for 27 years. He had not invented anything. He had only failed to update what he assumed. The lieutenant had not insulted me. He had repeated out loud what I had been hearing my whole life. That whoever I was, I could not possibly be the person in charge. I picked up the satellite phone and called Commander Naomi Pell, my oldest friend in the Navy. We had met at the replacement air group at Lemoore in 2005. Naomi was at her own command, ashore in San Diego, where the early evening was just beginning. The line was grainy. "Marin, heard you got a wardroom moment. News travels. You finally got someone to say it out loud, huh? I did not need it said, but it landed. Yes, you did. Marin, we all do." A long pause. "Eat your sandwich, go to bed. Tomorrow is a Tuesday." "Tomorrow is a Tuesday." I laughed. We hung up. I did not eat anything else. The coffee on my desk had gone cold an hour earlier. I turned the desk lamp off. I sat in the dark and watched the running lights of an escort destroyer in the distance. White over red. The ship hummed around me. The Reagan was making 16 knots on a heading of 270. The Pacific was empty and dark. The watch officers up on the bridge were doing their jobs. The strike group was doing its job. The crew was sleeping in 3,000 racks below me, getting ready to do its job in the morning. The wardroom would tell the story for a week, and then it would stop being a story and start being part of how the ship knew its commander. That was how it worked. That was how it had always worked on every ship I had ever been on. You did not become the commander on the day you read your orders. You became the commander on the day the ship decided you were. I thought in the dark cabin that I had spent 30 years being underestimated by a small audience that did not have the imagination to update its priors. And here, on this ship, the audience was a different size. The audience was 4,500 people. The audience could not afford to be wrong about who I was. The audience did the work that my family had refused to do. The audience saw me eventually because the audience needed to. There was a kind of cool clarity in that. The audience was not my family. The audience was my crew. And the crew was already, after 21 days, more sure of who I was than my parents had ever been. I went to bed at 22:30 hours. I slept 4 hours. The morning brief was at 0700. The next morning at 0700 hours, I ran the brief. Brody Caldwell was in the back rank of the wardroom in flight suit, eyes on the deck. I did not look at him for the first 6 minutes. I ran the brief precisely. Operational tempo for the next 72 hours. Air wing tasking, the fueling issue resolved overnight, a new training requirement passed down from the strike group commander. I spoke for 9 minutes. I did not refer to the previous day. I dismissed the brief. The room cleared. Brody stayed at his seat. I caught his eye. He stood up and walked forward. He stopped in front of the dais. He was at parade rest. He had rehearsed his apology. I let him give it. Captain, I want to apologize again, properly. I was disrespectful to you yesterday. I did not look. I did not pay attention. That is not who I want to be on this ship, ma'am. Lieutenant Caldwell, you owe me nothing. You owed the wardroom your attention, and you did not pay it. Fix that. The ship has things to do. Carry on. Yes, ma'am. He turned and walked out. He carried himself differently already. That afternoon, the runner from the Command Master Chief's office brought me a slip of paper. The runner was a first-class yeoman with 3 deployments under his belt, who had eaten my coffee mugs in goodwill and remembered every officer on the ship by their first name and rank. The slip was a request from the Public Affairs Officer at Surface Forces Pacific. Captain, the PAO at Surface Forces Pacific asked if you would be available for a brief interview next week. They are running a Navy Times feature on new carrier COS. Captain Vincent is the contact. I had always declined press. I did not like profiles. I did not like the way First Woman 2 got used in headlines. I preferred to do the work and let the work speak for itself. But I had been thinking, since the wardroom yesterday. I had been thinking about Garrett, about Britt's respectful question, about a lifetime of translation work, about the fact that, for my entire career, I had taken my family's disinterest as a kind of dignity. Let them think what they want. The ship moves either way. I had been thinking that maybe dignity did not require silence. Tell Captain Vincent I will do the interview. The runner nodded and left. Lila Park came in 2 minutes later with the afternoon signal traffic. Press? Lila said. You sure? I am done deciding what I am allowed to take up space for. She raised her eyebrows. She did not say anything. She set down the signal traffic on my desk and she let me go back to my work. 3 weeks later, the Reagan was back at North Island between workup phases for a 4-day maintenance window. The Navy Times piece ran on a Thursday morning. A 2-page profile, a photograph of me on the flag bridge in service khakis, the eagles on my collars catching the light, the bow of the carrier behind me. The piece ran through the career. Great Lakes in 1999, Penn State NROTC, Pensacola, the squadron tours, Top Gun, the deployments, the Distinguished Flying Cross, the Bronze Star with a V device, the Squadron Command, the Deep Draft Tour on the Henry J. Kaiser, the Reagan. The reporter wrote well. The piece read like a person, not a checklist. The strike group commander gave a quote. Captain Voss is one of the most operationally sound officers I have ever worked with. The piece went around the way pieces do in the Navy. Navy social media first. Then the spouse, Facebook groups. Then it reached a college roommate of Britt's, a woman named Sarah Quinn, who was married to a commander stationed at Norfolk. Sarah posted the article on her Facebook with a caption. Wait, isn't this Garrett's sister? I learned later, from Britt herself, what happened when Britt saw the notification. Britt was at the front counter of her boutique in Shadyside. It was a slow Thursday morning. She had been arranging a display of cashmere wraps. She picked up her phone to dismiss a notification and saw the Facebook post. She tapped the article. She read. She got to the photograph of me on the flag bridge. She read the caption underneath the photograph. She read the headline. She read the part about Top Gun. She read the part about the Distinguished Flying Cross. She had not known that I had a Distinguished Flying Cross. She had been my sister-in-law for 20 years and she had not known. The bell over the door of the boutique rang and she did not hear it. A customer in the back of the store called her name. She did not answer. She read the article all the way through. She read it again. She read the part where I had told the reporter, in a quote, I do not think of myself as a first woman anything. I think of myself as a captain. The eagles do not have a gender. She put down her phone. She looked at the cashmere wrap she had been about to fold. She did not fold it. She walked to the back of the store and apologized to the customer. The customer left. Britt told me later that she sat down on a stool behind the counter and put her hands flat on the glass and stared at the glass for 10 minutes. She told me she had not known how to feel. She told me much later that what she had been thinking about sitting there with her hands on the glass was the rehearsal dinner in 2006, the hallway, the wine, the respectful question. She told me she had been embarrassed for 20 years, retroactively in those 10 minutes. She told me her ears burned. I believed her. I did not know what to do with it. That night, Britt called Garrett. I did not hear about the call until weeks later. By the time the call was happening, I was already underway again. The Reagan was at sea on the 4th phase of workups. I was in the wardroom, alone, eating a sandwich. The corner booth at the head of the room was mine now. No one came in and yelled at me. The lieutenants paused at the door, saw me, nodded politely, and went to find another table. The call between Britt and Garrett happened at 4:15 that afternoon, Pittsburgh time. I learned about it weeks later because Garrett told me about it himself, slowly, in pieces, over several conversations. He had been on his way out of the office. He had been heading to a deposition prep with a paralegal and a junior associate. His phone rang. He saw it was Britt. He answered. "Garrett, did you see this article?" "What article?" "About your sister, Marin, in Navy Times." "Marin is in Navy Times?" "She is the captain of an aircraft carrier, Garrett." "I know she is a captain. She got promoted." I sent her a card. "No, not a captain like a manager. Captain of a ship. A nuclear aircraft carrier, the USS Ronald Reagan. 4,500 people work for her." There was a long pause on the line. "She told me she got command. She did not say it was the Reagan." "Read the article." Garrett canceled the deposition prep. He went back to his office. He closed the door. He read the article on his desktop computer. He read it 3 times. He read the part about Top Gun. He read the part about the Distinguished Flying Cross. He read the part where the reporter quoted the strike group commander. He looked at the photograph for a long time. He had not seen my face like that before. Calm, lined, eyes on something beyond the camera. He had not known my career was real. He told me later that what he felt, sitting there at his desk in the firm, was not pride. It was embarrassment. He was the family's success story. He had spent 30 years being the older brother who had figured it out. And there was a Navy Times feature about his sister being trusted with one of the most powerful warships in the world, and he had been on a deposition prep call when the email came in. He called my mother. My mother has been retired 3 years from teaching 2nd grade at Markham Elementary. She has never quite figured out what I do. She had thought captain meant a kind of manager. She Googled USS Ronald Reagan on her tablet at the kitchen table. She read the article. She made noise with her hand at her chest. She walked into the kitchen, where my father was making coffee, and she put her hand on his arm. "Roger, sit down." "What?" "Read this." She put the tablet in front of him. They read together. My father read the article slowly. He has always read slowly. He gets to the end of every paragraph and pauses. He got to the part about the 4 operational deployments, the 2 combat tours, the Bronze Star with Valor, the Distinguished Flying Cross, the Squadron Command, the Deep Draft Tour, the Reagan. He set down his coffee mug. The kitchen clock ticked. 27 years, my father said. "What?" "She has been in 27 years. We have been asking her when she's going to settle down for 27 years. "Yes." My mother took off her reading glasses. She set them on the table. She has told me since then that she sat at the kitchen table for an hour after my father went out to the garage. She did not get up to make lunch. She read the article 3 more times. She has told me that what she was thinking about sitting there at the kitchen table was the bus station in 1999 and the turkey sandwich in the paper bag and the way her hands had shaken, folding the wax paper over the bread. She had been frightened that morning. She had folded the wax paper because she could not bear not to. She told me, much later, that she had spent 27 years afterward telling herself the fear was reasonable, that the daughter she had hugged at the bus stop had needed protection from the choice the daughter was making. She told me, my mother, that the article was the first piece of paper in 27 years that made her think the fear had been about her, not about me. My brother called me that night. The connection was grainy. The Reagan was at sea. The satellite line cut in and out. He sounded different, not contrite, not theatrical, just different. Hey, Garrett. I saw the piece." "Yeah. Mom and Dad are looking at it. Mom keeps asking me what embarked air wing means." "She could ask me." A beat. "Yeah, she could." He did not apologize for 30 years of dismissal. He was not there yet. But he said, awkward, the syllables coming hard, "Marin, I am sorry I did not ask." I let it sit. I did not give him a discount. "Okay." We talked for 9 minutes about nothing in particular. He asked what an embarked air wing was. I told him. The air wing is the 4 squadrons of FA-18s, and the helicopter squadron, and the early warning aircraft squadron, and the electronic attack squadron that fly off the deck and live on the ship and are commanded by a captain who reports to the CO. He asked who the CO was. I said it was me. He said, very slowly, "Right." We hung up. 3 weeks later, after a port call, Britt's card arrived in the ship's mailroom and was forwarded to my in-port cabin. It was a small white card. Inside, Britt had written in her tight cursive, "Marin, I am proud to be your sister-in-law. I am sorry it took me so long to say it. Britt." I read it once. I did not cry. I put the card in my desk drawer next to my change of command program, 2 pieces of paper that meant different things. I closed the drawer. I did not fly home. The Reagan was on workup schedule. There was no leave window. I would not have taken leave even if there had been one. The crew was the crew. The ship was the ship. The work was the work. The work was, on a Tuesday in late April, a casualty drill in number 3 main space at 0300 hours, followed by a fueling at sea with the USNS Henry J. Kaiser at 0600 hours, followed by a complex air defense exercise from 0900 to 1300 hours, followed by a flag spaces brief with the strike group commander at 1500 hours. The work was the rhythm. The work was what I had been waiting for my whole life and what I had built my life around being good at. I did not want to leave it. In late April, my mother left me a voicemail. It came through the comms division on a Thursday morning. It was 12 seconds long. I played it on the small speaker on my desk. "Marin, sweetheart, it is Mom. I do not know if you are getting my messages. I wanted to ask. When do you think you might be home? Thanksgiving, Christmas, whenever you have time, whenever the ship allows. I would like to see you." Her voice cracked on, I had never heard her voice crack like that. I played the voicemail twice. I sat at my desk and looked at the ceiling for a minute. I picked up the satellite phone and called her back. It was the longest phone conversation I had had with my mother in a decade. 40 minutes, she asked questions. Real ones this time. "What does a CO do all day? What is the wardroom like? Are you eating enough? Are you sleeping? Marin, do you have someone to talk to when the days are hard?" "Yes, Mom, I do." "Who?" "I have my XO. I have a command master chief who is older than dirt and reads me like a book. I have a friend named Naomi who I have known since the FA-18 schoolhouse. And I have a CAG who stands up in wardrooms when he needs to." "What is a CAG?" "The boss of the air wing, Mom." "Are they your friends, or are they just your colleagues?" "Mom, on a ship, the line between those is different. They are my crew. That is more than a friend. I would walk through anything for them and they would walk through anything for me. That is what a crew is." A long pause. My mother, quietly, "I did not know that." "I know." We talked for another half hour. She asked about the food. I told her about the wardroom on Sundays when the cooks make eggs Benedict and the bridge watch comes down for breakfast after the morning watch rolls over. She asked about the noise. I told her about flight ops at night, the catapults firing, the rumble through the deck. She asked about my chair on the bridge. I told her about it, the high one in the corner with the captain's plate on the back. I told her that I had inherited it from a man who had retired as a vice admiral and that the chair had been on the bridge of every CO of the ship since the ship had been commissioned. "Marin, would you sit in that chair if I came to visit?" "Yes, Mom." She did not ask anything else about it. She let it sit. A week later, my brother called again. He had been thinking. He had been reading. He asked a real question. "Marin, after this tour, what is next? What does the path look like?" "Whatever comes next. Probably a strike group, maybe a job in Washington." "A strike group is bigger than a ship." "It is several ships, a carrier, a couple of destroyers, a cruiser, sometimes a submarine. A rear admiral commands it." A pause. "So if you got a strike group, you would be a rear admiral?" "Yes." "Marin, that is an admiral." "Yes, Garrett, that is an admiral." A pause. He laughed, a small laugh, embarrassed. "I have been calling you my sister the captain for 2 years like it was small. That is not small." "No, it is not." "I am sorry." I let it sit. I did not issue an absolution, but I let it sit, gently. "Okay, Garrett." Britt sent a second card, then a small care package. A tin of cookies from the Shady Side bakery I had used to walk to when I was home on leave. The note inside. I remembered you liked the lemon ones. Brit. I ate 2 cookies at my desk. I saved the rest for the Command Master Chief, who had a sweet tooth, and who, when I gave him the tin, took 1 cookie, ate it slowly, looked at me, and said only, "Captain, that is a very fine cookie. Tell your sister-in-law thank you." I told him I would. Late April rolled into early May. The Reagan deployed on a short, Western Pacific workup cycle, 60 days, intended to test the strike group's readiness ahead of the full deployment later in the year. I was at sea. I did not call home. The work was the work. But I thought about my mother's voicemail at 0300 hours in my in-port cabin one night. And I thought about my brother's, that is an admiral. And I thought about Brit's lemon cookies in the tin. Rebuilding does not mean returning. I had been thinking about that for a long time. They did not get the daughter back, who had spent 20 years trying to be seen. They got the woman who had finally stopped asking. I would let them in. I would not move my life to make room. They could find their seat on the chairs that were already there. The 60-day workup deployment was a different kind of underway than the basic phase. The basic phase had been about teaching the ship how to be a ship. The workup deployment was about testing what the ship had learned. 60 days at sea, 2 weeks in the Western Pacific operating area, a port call at Pearl Harbor on the way back. The strike group commander wanted us hot. We were hot. Brody Caldwell flew well. He flew very well. He developed one of the best landing signal officer patterns in the air wing. His passes were predictable. His power calls were precise. His glide path was on speed. He stopped performing in the wardroom. He looked before he spoke. The other lieutenants noticed the change in him. So did the CAG. Reed made a note in his next fitness report input on Brody. Lieutenant Caldwell has developed considerable judgment over this deployment. Recommend retention. Recommend for department head selection. Brody did not know the note had been written. I knew because Reed mentioned it to me at breakfast one morning. I told Reed it was a good call. Reed nodded. We finished our coffee. We went back to work. In the middle of May, in the Western Pacific operating area, the Air Wing executed a complex strike package exercise. 12 aircraft, multiple coordinated events, friendly and adversarial air, surface threats, submarine threats. I was in the flag spaces watching my watch officer manage the air picture. The exercise went clean. After the debrief, Reed came by the cabin door. "Good night, Skipper." "Good night, CAG." He turned to go, and then paused. "Captain, I do not say this lightly. The wing is the best wing I have ever flown with. That is because of you. The way you set the tempo, the way you let people be good at their jobs." "Reed, thank you." He nodded and left. I sat at my desk for a long time after he left. I did not write anything down. I sat. There are days in a tour when the small moments are the ones you carry. That was one of them. A week later, the Reagan put into Pearl Harbor for a brief port call, mail call. My yeoman brought me a bundle, official correspondence. One personal letter. The handwriting on the envelope was my father's. The handwriting was shakier than I remembered. I had not received an envelope addressed to me from my father in more than 30 years. I opened it at my desk. 3 lines. "Marin, I owe you something I do not know how to say in person. I should have told you a long time ago. I am proud of you. I always was. I just did not know how to say it. Dad." I read the letter once. I folded it. I put it in my desk drawer with Brit's card and my change of command program. I sat at the desk for a long time and did not write back. I wanted to think about what to say. There's a thing I had wanted to say for 30 years, and I had not figured out the shape of it yet. I did not want to use the first words that came. He had finally said it. The thing I had not known I was still waiting to hear. And I sat there at my desk in Pearl with the harbor lights coming on outside the porthole, and I realized I did not know what to do with it. I had built my life on not needing it. And here it was anyway. Late. Real. Mine. The Reagan got underway again the next morning at 0700 hours. Tugs eased her off the camels. The pier slid away. We made channel speed past Ford Island. The Arizona Memorial came up off the port quarter. The crew lined the rails as we passed. I had done this 20 times in my career, and I had not gotten used to it. I did not want to get used to it. The Arizona stayed in our wake until the channel turned and we put it astern. The transit home took 9 days. The crew began to count down. The mess deck bulletin board filled with homecoming countdown sheets. The chiefs ran inspections that they would not have run 2 weeks earlier. The XO ran a series of damage control drills that she would not have run 2 weeks earlier. The wardroom was busy. The ship was busy. I walked the ship every day. I knew by then every passageway, every space, every key billet by name. On the last evening of the transit, I stood on the flag bridge at sunset. The Reagan was making 16 knots on a heading of 090. The sea was a deep blue. The bow waved through spray. The crew had begun to line the rails for entering port, even though port was still a day and a half out. I thought about my family. I thought about my crew. I thought about the chairs at my parents' kitchen table and the chairs on the flag bridge, and which chairs were mine. I thought about my father's 3 lines. About my mother's, I did not know that. About my brother saying, "That is not small." I did not know yet what I was going to say to my father. I knew that I was going to say it in person. I had been at the bus station in 1999, and he had been at the bus station too, and neither of us had said the thing that needed saying. I had been at every Thanksgiving, and he had been at every Thanksgiving, and neither of us had said it. I had been on the phone the day they picked me for Top Gun, and he had been on the phone too, and neither of us had said it. He had said it now, in 3 lines on a piece of paper, with a handwriting that had begun to shake. I would say it to him in person. I would not write it. I wanted him to see my face when I said it. I went below. I slept 4 hours. The pilot boat would meet us off Point Loma at 0500 hours. The Reagan moored at North Island at 0730 hours on a Friday in early June. Tugs eased us against the camels. The brow went over. The crew lined the rails in service whites. Below, on the pier, hundreds of families waited. Children with handmade signs, spouses with flowers, babies who had been born while their parent was deployed and had never met them. The strike group commander made his entry. Reed stood next to me on the flag bridge during sea and anchor detail and quietly said, "Welcome home, Captain." I said, "Welcome home, CAG." We watched the ship come alongside. I walked down the brow in service khakis. The eagles on my collar caught the morning sun. My commandant sea-pin sat over my left breast pocket. My family was near the brow where I had told them to wait. My mother had been crying for an hour and was trying to stop. My father was in a sport coat he had not worn since Garrett's law school graduation. My brother was in jeans. Britt was in a navy blue dress. My mother saw me first. "Oh, Marin," she hugged me. It was the longest hug I could remember. She did not say anything for a long time. She just held on. I felt her hands shaking against my shoulder blades the way her hands had shaken folding the wax paper over the turkey sandwich in 1999. She had been frightened then. She was not frightened now. She was something else, something I did not have a word for. My father stepped forward. He shook my hand and then changed his mind and pulled me into a hug. He did not say anything either. His shoulders were thinner than I remembered. His hands were larger. He hugged me the way a man hugs his daughter when he has finally figured out something he should have figured out a long time ago. I let him hug me. I did not push it away. Garrett hugged me. He patted my shoulder twice in the way men do. "Hey, Captain, hi." "Hi, Garrett." Britt was last. She was awkward but earnest. She held out her hand. Then she changed her mind. Then she hugged me quickly. "Captain, sister." "Hi." I laughed. "Hi, Britt." My mother looked up at the ship. She had never seen a warship. She had only seen photographs. The Reagan is over 1,000 feet long. Her flight deck towers over the pier. Her island rises like an apartment building. There was a pause in which my mother forgot to breathe. "Marin, it is enormous." "She is the size of a small town," my father said. "She is a town," I said. "She is my town." I took them on a tour of the ship. I walked them through the hangar bay where FA-18s sat folded with their wings tucked. I walked them onto the flight deck. The wind off the bay caught Britt's hair. Garrett stood at the foul line and looked at the catapult tracks and shook his head. My mother held my elbow as we climbed the ladder to the bridge. On the bridge, I showed them the captain's chair, the high one in the corner with the captain's plate on the back. "This is your chair," my mother said. "This is my chair. Marin, this is your chair." She touched the armrest like she was reading Braille. Captain Reed Mackenzie came onto the bridge to pay his respects to the family. He shook my father's hand. He shook Garrett's hand. He shook Britt's hand. He bowed slightly to my mother and shook her hand. Mrs. Voss, it is a pleasure. I wanted to say, your daughter is the best CO I have worked for. The wing is honored to fly off her deck. My mother's eyes filled. She did not reply. She nodded twice and squeezed Reed's hand. That evening, we ate dinner at a restaurant in Coronado, a low-lit place with seafood and candles on the tables. The 5 of us. My father ordered a bottle of wine and poured it carefully. The conversation was awkward at first. Then it warmed. Garrett asked about life at sea. Britt asked about the food on the ship. My mother asked how I stayed in touch with friends. I answered. I did not put on a performance. I told the truth about my life. My family listened. Halfway through dinner, my father set down his glass. I want to tell a story. He looked at me. 1999. August. Bus station. Maureen was 18 years old. She had a duffel bag and a turkey sandwich your mother packed her. And I told her, smiling like I was being kind. I said, 6 months. That is my prediction. 6 months and you will be home asking for tuition money. He laughed at himself. The laugh was not bitter. I was off by 27 years. The table laughed. I laughed. My mother reached across the table and put her hand on my hand and squeezed. After dessert, my mother said she wanted to tell me something. She set down her coffee cup and folded her napkin and looked at the tablecloth. She told me she had been thinking, since the article, about the photograph on the refrigerator under the strawberry magnet. She told me she had moved the photograph 3 weeks ago. She had moved Garrett's photographs to the side and put the photograph from my boot camp graduation in the center of the refrigerator. She said she had been meaning to do that for 27 years and had not known until 3 weeks ago that she had been meaning to. I told her thank you. She nodded. She did not look up from the tablecloth. My father, on her left, reached over and put his hand on her arm and left it there. After dinner, in the parking lot, my father took my hand and held it for a beat longer than the situation required and said quietly, looking somewhere over my shoulder so that I would not have to look at him while he said it. Maureen, about the letter. I meant it. I said, I know, Dad. I know you meant it. We did not say anything else. I let him go. He walked to the rental car. My mother followed him. Garrett and Britt followed them. They drove back to the hotel. Late that night, I walked back to the ship. The Reagan was lit up against the pier, every porthole, every running light, the island's lights, the flight deck floods. The ship looked from the pier like a small city after a long day, the windows lit and the streets quiet. I stood at the foot of the brow before going aboard. I thought about the wardroom in March, about Brody Caldwell, about Reed standing up, about my mother's voicemail in April, about my father's 3-line letter at Pearl, about my brother saying, that is not small, about Britt's lemon cookies, about my mother's hand on my hand at the restaurant. I used to want them to see me, for a long time, and then I stopped wanting it. And then they saw me anyway, and I learned something I did not expect to learn. The people who could not see you when you were small do not get to draft the story of who you became. They can only be invited into a chapter that is already being written. The ship moves either way. If you have spent your life being underestimated by the people who should have seen you first, keep going. The truth about who you are does not need their permission to be true. I walked up the brow. The petty officer of the watch saluted. I saluted back. I crossed onto the quarterdeck. Reagan, arriving. The bell rang. I went below. If you have ever had someone in your family underestimate everything you have built, or had to walk through a room of strangers who could not see who you really were, I would love to hear your story in the comments. Did your truth eventually surface the way mine did? Did the people you wanted to see you ever actually see you, or did you stop needing them to? And if this one hit home for you, please hit subscribe. Thank you for spending your evening with me.